All right, these are the real statistics, totals, as of 8/4/2020. All the statistics. All right, this is something that just pretty much everybody knows. Basically, right now, they have stopped the world. Literally, the whole world has stopped because of COVID-19. All right, this is just COVID deaths out of people in long-term care facilities like nursing homes. 1.9 million Americans live in long-term care facilities. 3.6% of people died from COVID, and that accounts for 45% of all the deaths. So this only counts for 3.6% of deaths in nursing homes. Now, how many people not in nursing homes that died of COVID? 0.03%. Percentage of Americans that test positive for COVID-19 all the way since it began, 1.5%. Percentage of Americans that are currently positive for COVID-19, 0.7%. These are the hardest hit states. If you don't live in New York or New Jersey, the hardest hit ones, 0.03%. People died not in New York and New Jersey. The total number of states with fewer than 1,000 people that died in America, 24 states, less than 1,000. I mean, I don't understand why Donald Trump just ain't saying this in his speeches. All right, these are the 4 states that's being mad reported by the news. It's 22,667 deaths just in Texas, Florida, Georgia, and Arizona. So those 4 states just compared to New York. New York's 32,798. Like 10,000 more in all 4 of them states together that the media has been reporting like crazy about. And there's 4 times the number of people in them 4 states. And these are the 4 deadliest states besides New York and New Jersey. All right, just on people, mask mandates per state. The 10 deadliest states that require you to wear a mask is 8. The 10 least deadliest states that have mask laws is 5. 5 out of 10 of the least. New York and New Jersey, if they were their own country, they would rank as first in the number of COVID deaths. If New York and New Jersey was to count themselves as a country on world ranking, if Texas, Georgia, Florida, and Arizona were their own countries with way more of the population, they would be ranking in the world to New York and New Jersey the 13th worst. So per million people in the US with New York and New Jersey is 483. 483 people out of a million. Without 350 New Jersey. During this so-called plague, we've missed tons of graduations on a plague killing less than 0.03% we've left our loved ones to die alone. We've been forbidden to gather at funerals to mourn passings of our loved ones on something that's not killing many more people than flu season. We've watched businesses go under, unemployment at all-time historical highs. And you can't even make shit up like this. But while there's over 30 million people out of work, and I'm not a big fan of Trump, but why he gets us out the stimulus checks that Congress has been debating about forever, instead of going over our stimulus checks, Congress sits there and Nancy Pelosi is promoting a bill that they want to kill you. Yeah, but I bullshit you not. It's called, I've done a few videos about it. It's Agenda 2030. And that's what they're trying to push through Congress. Instead of getting people their stimulus checks, they're trying to put through bills that want to kill a lot of Americans.
Resolution 353, concurrent resolution expressing the sense of the Congress that the United States should assume a strong leadership role in implementing the decisions made at the Earth Summit by developing a national strategy to implement Agenda 21 and other Earth Summit agreements through domestic policy and foreign policy, by cooperating with all countries to identify and initiate further agreements to protect the global environment, and by supporting and participating in a high-level United Nations Sustainable Development Commission.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Engel, will be recognized for 20 minutes, and the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Broomfield, will be recognized for 20 minutes. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume and ask leave to revise and extend my remarks.
Objection so ordered. Gentleman's right.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of H.Con.Res. 353, expressing the sense of the Congress that the United States should assume a strong leadership role in implementing the decisions made at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, and developing a national strategy to implement Agenda 21 and other Earth Summit agreements through domestic policy and foreign policy, by cooperating with all countries to identify and initiate further agreements to protect the global environment, and by supporting and participating in a high-level United Nations Sustainable Development Commission as amended. I now yield to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Pelosi, the sponsor, to explain the resolution.
The gentlewoman from California is recognized.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding. In fact, it is a very simple resolution, which the gentleman has just mostly explained. I would, Mr. Speaker, like to take a moment to thank Chairman Fassell and Mr. Broomfield, Mr. Yatron and Mr. Bereiter, the chair and ranking member of the subcommittee, and the members of the Foreign Affairs Committee for their assistance in expediting consideration of this legislation. The Earth Summit Environmental Leadership Act, as this is known, presents us with an opportunity to follow up on the important work of the Earth Summit to develop its blueprint, Agenda 21, for global environmental action. H.Con.Res. 353 outlines a comprehensive national strategy for sustainable development in accordance with the principles of Agenda 21, to be coordinated under the leadership of a specific office and the direction of a high-level government official. The resolution also urges the United States to identify and initiate further agreements to protect the global environment and to support the creation of a high-level United Nations Sustainable headed by an Undersecretary General. Third and lastly, the President is urged to report to Congress on the progress made on with this action. H.Con.Res. 353 is supported by the administration. I have been in contact with the appropriate offices of the State Department and have incorporated their suggestions into the resolution. The 71 co-sponsors of this measure include one-half the members of the Foreign Affairs Committee and all of the House delegates to the Earth Summit. It is also supported by the major United States non-governmental organizations concerned with the environmental issues. The Earth Summit presented world leaders with an opportunity that should not be lost. We must now embark on a new course that will sustain our planet and its resources for the benefit of future generations. This resolution calls on the United States to assert its leadership to achieve this goal. I urge my colleagues to support this resolution. Thanks again to the members of the Foreign Affairs Committee for their recognition of the importance and timeliness of this resolution. We must make the promise of Rio a reality. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself this time as I need, and I ask permission to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objections to order, the gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I do support this resolution, which expresses the sense of Congress with respect to implementing the decisions of the recent United Nations Conference on Environment and Development. And I do want to express and commend the gentlelady from California, Mrs. Pelosi, for her sponsorship of this important resolution. Mr. Speaker, despite all of the criticism of the administration policy toward the Earth Summit, the fact is that the United States government made a very constructive contribution in Rio and in the talks that led to the meeting in Rio. Largely as a result of the conference, that they adopted 4 major items: the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development, the lengthy action plan referred to as Agenda 21, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and the non-binding but authoritative principles for the management and conservation of forest resources. In addition, the conference adopted the UN Biodiversity Convention, which the administration decided not to join at this time. And this was due to concerns about intellectual property and also the decision-making and funding mechanism. The administration has already made a good beginning in implementing the results of the conference. And during the talks on climate, the administration pledged $75 million for related projects in developing countries, including the development of national plans. The president announced that the United States would have our own national plan on climate ready by the end of the year in order to start international consultations in January of 1993. The president announced a Forest for the Future initiative to double worldwide forestry assistance, beginning with $150 million additional U.S. contribution. The administration is preparing for consideration by the UN General Assembly of establishment of the Sustainable Development Commission called for in Rio, and is working on an interagency basis to formulate further plans to implement the other recommendations of the conference. The good start made by the administration shows that the United States is serious about international cooperation to address global environmental problems. The resolution before us calls for similar measures to implement the recommendation of Rio Conference. The State Department does support the provisions of this resolution, which are fully consistent with U.S. policy toward implementing the results of the Earth Summit. Mrs. Pelosi should be further commended for her cooperative attitude on the issues that were raised by the department at an early stage in the consideration of this resolution. Mr. Speaker, I was also appointed to the Earth Summit as an observer, a delegation. Although I did not actually attend the conference, I did follow the proceedings very carefully. Recently, I had the opportunity to contribute to an article on these matters to a magazine called Michigan International Lawyer. I request that this summary of my views be inserted in the record at the conclusion of my remarks, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Objections to order. The gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I have no further requests.
To despair, not dream. I'd start with energy. I'd cut off America's supply of cheap, abundant energy. I couldn't take it by force, so I'd make Americans feel guilty about using the energy that heats their homes, fuels their cars, runs their businesses, and powers their economy. I'd make cheap energy expensive, so that expensive energy would seem cheap. I would empower unelected bureaucrats to all but outlaw America's most abundant sources of energy. After banning its use in America, I'd make it illegal for American companies to ship it overseas. If I wanted America to fail, I'd use their schools to teach one generation of Americans that their factories and their cars will cause a new ice age. And I'd muster a straight face so I could teach the next generation that they're causing global warming. When it's cold out, I'd call it climate change instead. I'd imply that America's cities and factories could run wind power and wishes. I'd teach children how to ignore the hypocrisy of condemning logging, mining, and farming while having roofs over their heads, heat in their homes, and food on their tables. I would never teach children that the free market is the only force in human history to uplift the poor, establish the middle class, and create lasting prosperity. Instead, I demonize prosperity itself so they will not miss what they will never have. If I wanted America to fail, I would create countless new regulations and seldom cancel old ones. They would be so complicated that only bureaucrats, lawyers, and lobbyists could understand them. That way small businesses with big ideas wouldn't stand a chance. And I would never have to worry about another Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, or Steve Jobs. I would ridicule as flat earthers those who urge them to lower energy costs by increasing supply. And when the evangelists of common sense try to remind people about the laws of supply and demand, I'd enlist a sympathetic media to drown them out. If I wanted America to fail, I would empower unaccountable bureaucracy seated in a distant capital to bully Americans out of their dreams and their property rights. I'd send federal agents to raid guitar factories for using the wrong kind of wood. I'd force homeowners to tear down their own homes built on their own land. I'd make it almost impossible for farmers to farm, miners to mine, loggers to log, and builders to build. Because I don't believe in free markets, I'd invent false ones. I'd devise fictitious products like carbon credits and trade them in imaginary markets. I'd convince people that this would create jobs and be good for the economy. If I wanted America to fail, for every concern I'd invent a crisis, and for every crisis I'd invent the cause, like shutting down entire industries and killing tens of thousands of jobs in the name of saving spotted owls. And when everyone learned the stunning irony that the owls were victims of their larger cousins and not people, it would already be decades too late. If I wanted America to fail, I'd make it easier to stop commerce than to start it, easier to kill jobs than create them, more fashionable to resent success than to seek it. When industries seek to create jobs, I'd file lawsuits to stop them, and then I'd make taxpayers pay for my lawyers. If I wanted America to fail, I would transform the environmental agenda from a document of conservation to an economic suicide pact. I would concede entire industries to our economic rivals by imposing regulations that cost trillions. I would celebrate those who preach environmental austerity in public while indulging a lavish lifestyle in private. I convince Americans that Europe has it right and that America has it wrong. If I wanted America to fail, I would prey on the goodness and the decency of ordinary Americans. I would only need to convince them that all of this is for the greater good. If I wanted America to fail, I suppose I wouldn't change a thing.